Welcome, what is up? Thank you for tuning back into the Chaos Lair. Of course, I'm Chris Chaos. A very sad Chris Chaos because my Gators softball team lost tonight. The Gators baseball team won. Softball team lost. I'm a little upset, a little sad, so this should be interesting. The 411 Monday Night Raw edition from June the 6th, 2017. Now, after the pay-per-view last night, I didn't give it exactly a favorable rating. I went back and watched the pay-per-view again today. The pay-per-view was actually a little better than I give it, or than the grade I gave it last night. So, maybe I was a little harsh on it. It was probably like a B-, not a C. So that's better. That's better. I'm upping your grade, after consideration. Anyway, Bray Wyatt starts off the show, does one of his fantastic promos, interrupted by Roman Reigns. Roman comes out, my yard, and then punches him. And then we have the match, Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns. Physical match. I thought they told a good story. It was crowd participation, if you will. They were into it. All in all, if I'm Vince McMahon and I'm sitting in the back watching this, I'm happy. So, but then again, I'm not Vince. I'm not a millionaire or a billionaire or whatever he is now, and it is what it is. I'm here with you. Enzo and Cass interview in the back, interviewed by Charlie. They call out, well, Enzo calls out Corey Graves, or maybe it was Cass. That's one of them. Called out Corey Graves, which Graves didn't have any rebuttal after the fact. Kurt Angle's still worried about what is this thing that's about to blow up. Alexa comes in. Again, she feels disrespected. Fine, whatever, I'm done with Bayley. And then Kurt says, well, didn't you promise Nia Jax you'd give her a shot? I think you did. I'm going to hold you to that. You're going to have the match tonight. You and Nia Jax for the women's title. Huh? Of course, it was rumored that was going to happen. Saw that. Wasn't surprised. Surprised how the match actually went. A little, but I'll get to that. The Drifter, who is just fantastic. Dean Ambrose comes out because Dean, is pissed. And attacks Samson. Demands that Miz gives him a title shot when the Miz comes on the Tron and says, no. Not today. And then Samson attacks Dean Ambrose. Kind of hope they're doing like a side angle with these two. I think it would be really good. Or maybe that's Dean's next feud is going to be with Samson. Just kind of a little one-off deal. Just to get Samson, fully engulfed on the main roster. But anyway. Kurt Angle makes Dean Ambrose leave the arena. We all know what that means. Although we never see Dean leave, we're all under the assumption, if you're smart enough to realize what's going on here, that, Dean's probably not going to leave and he's going to bust up the celebration later on. Samoa Joe cut a great promo on Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar. Well, basically, Brock Lesnar. I'll get to the Paul Heyman side of it in a moment. I want everything Brock has. I want his schedule. I want the fear that he puts in every other man on this roster. And I want the title. And I want Paul Heyman. I want Paul Heyman as my advocate to run my errands. I was hoping, and Paul came out, I was hoping that Paul would say, I don't run his errands. I take care of his business. That was the one spot that I thought Paul failed. And it's very hard to point out somewhere that Paul Heyman failed in a promo ever. But that is the one spot that I will point out and say, it's probably where Paul should have went there. Just had that little detour to that and then back to the point. Brock Lesnar's going to hurt you. And I'm going to have to make sure that happens. And Samoa Joe's rebuttal wasn't on the mic. He backs Paul into a corner. He actually stops him from leaving, backs him into another corner, drops the mic, and tells him that he's going to choke him out. And he wants Paul to take that back to Brock Lesnar and embellish how bad it really is. And then he does it. And Paul passes out. He flops like a fish. He's tapping. And then I thought it was a great segment. Fantastic work all the way around. And Paul Heyman must really like Samoa Joe to be put in a spot or to approve of him being put in a spot where he was going to get physical or get manhandled by somebody. Because that's not really Paul's MO. Paul doesn't do that with anybody. So for him to do that with Samoa Joe, that's from my money's worth, that's high praise that Paul has for Samoa Joe. It's the little things that you have to get through. Heath Slater and Rhino, glad to see them on Raw. They lost to Sheamus and Cesaro, and the champions, and they cut a promo. No Hardys, nothing. It was all quick, succinct, like it needed to be. TJ Perkins versus Mustafa Ali, the only cruiserweight match on Raw, which I agree with myself from last night that this is how this needs to go from now on. It needs to just be sprinkled in. It doesn't need to be, there doesn't need to be two matches, and a match for the cruiserweights doesn't need to be multiple segments. It needs to be one segment. It just needs to be sprinkled. It doesn't need to be lathered in, if that makes any sense to anybody, which it should, because everybody should be that smart to get where I'm going. Neville attacks TJ after the match, says that tomorrow night on 205 Live we get the Cruiserweight title match that we've been waiting for. Well, he's been waiting on anyway. Kurt Angle, and I wrote this down because I thought that this was going to be important for whenever. Kurt Angle leaves the arena and Dean Ambrose comes back in, which, like I said earlier, we all knew that was probably going to happen. But then the Revival is sitting there, just kind of hanging out off in the background. And you see them as Kurt's leaving the arena. Kurt starts to walk out the door. You see him in the background. Is that the Revival? And then the camera, Dean comes in and looks down the hallway, sees them, looks back down the hallway this way, but you can still see him in the background. I just think it's interesting. Kalisto defeated Titus O'Neil after he pulled the tights, a la last week when Titus pulled the tights, which I thought was funny. This is a really good little storyline that's going through. Basically, it's just some minor story that they're putting together just to keep people cognizant of the fact that all of these guys still have a job, I guess. But everybody's executing this angle, and it's going really good, I think. So I have no qualms about any of this because I love Kalisto's work. I think Apollo is way underrated, and as a Gator, I have to support my fellow Gator, Titus O'Neil. By the way, big chomp chomp. Chomp 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 chomp. Anyway. Maurice intros The Miz for his lavish celebration, which turns out to be more of the comedy angle than we probably expected it to be. Miz beats up a guy in a bear suit, which we all thought, be honest, because I'm being honest, I thought that was Dean Ambrose too. It wasn't. Then beats up a box that has a grandfather clock in it. Some people probably didn't think that was Dean. I, unfortunately, did think it was Dean in that box. And then Dean turns out to be a camera guy. Maurice has already left. She's mad that Miz broke the clock. And Dirty Deeds. And we go home. The Club versus Enzo, because Big Cass got knocked out, and I'll talk about that in a second. Enzo and the Big Show, and they get the win. Cass gets laid out before the Miz in his celebration, and he's holding a chain. And there's a couple of different ways they could lead you here, and I'll let everybody come to their own conclusion. I think that this is kind of like a swerve off of a swerve. Cass is going to be the one that's going to be the attacker, unless they sign somebody or bring somebody up from NXT, or it just turns out to be the Revival, or it turns out to be Corey Graves and Corey Graves gets back in the ring, which I would be a huge fan of, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there, and I know everybody else would be too. We would, however, miss Corey on the mic every Monday night on commentary, but didn't you get Corey in the ring? So, which is better? I'd rather have Corey in the ring than Corey on the mic doing commentary. Because as a fellow former wrestler, I know what it's like to have something taken from you. Your spot. And although I didn't have my spot taken from me, I kind of did. Except for Corey got hurt and he was told he couldn't wrestle. I was already hurt and I knew that I shouldn't wrestle. And I just kind of let, the smarter chaos prevail in that situation. Anyway, that's enough about me. The women's title match, Alexa Bliss and Nia Jackson's in a DQ because Mickey and Dana calls the DQ after Alexa goes after them. Why they're even in... That's why they were at ringside, and it all works out for Alexa. And then Nia just beats the hell out of everybody or goes after everybody, and Alexa powders and runs away. The Samoa Joe Seth Rollins match was really good. It was a good main event for the show. I like how they ended it with Bray's little thing popping up, and then he was nowhere to be found. More mind games. I guess they're going into a Bray versus Seth angle, which would be nice. I mean, that's going to be a great match at #balls or #WWE balls, because I'm not saying the pay-per-view name. I'm not going there. But in any event, there you have it. Now, that covers Raw. Took longer than I wanted it to, but at least it's not 19 minutes like last night. I will say, however, though, that I do want you to go check out the video that I posted last night entitled, Let's Make History, ... Again, my thoughts on the Women's SmackDown ladder match, Money in the Bank ladder match, in a couple of weeks. My thought on who I think should win the match, why I think they should win the match, and what I think WWE should do for Naomi for the pay-per-view. Revolutionary idea. And if I had to bet $100 right now, I would think that WWE has already thought of that idea. They're probably going to do that idea, but I'm still going to take credit for the idea because I came on here weeks before and said it, and I'm going to consider that they stole it from me. So, until then, that's all I've got. I'm out of here. Deuces, as always, Chaos.